Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Deborah Rue, and this is Human Potential at Work. As a reminder, I'm the CEO of Rue Global Impact, and I'm blessed to get to know people all over the world. My guest today is joining us from Egypt, and I've known about her work for a really long time. When I visited Cairo 3 different times. Beautiful, amazing country, and I learned about her work from the government of Egypt. And they were very proud of what she was doing. And then I've talked to her many times. We actually were going to come over and do a conference with her at one time around, it's such an interesting time always in the world. But I think that was a little after the Arab Spring. But so we're going to talk about this. So Amena El-Saie is the CEO and founder of Helm, Egypt. And she normally, I thought, was going to join us from Cairo, but she's actually joining us from a little different location, and she's going to show it to us. So welcome to the program. We really are glad you're here.
Thank you, Deborah. The pleasure is all mine. It's lovely to be here and lovely to see your lovely face. So let me quickly, before we start, give you a quick glimpse of the lovely sea view. You know, this
I
is
want
my
to be with you
over here, and a lot of people are doing some sports, water sports over there, and it's such a beautiful day, to be honest, and it makes it a little bit easier to work around this beautiful view and this beautiful energy within the problem of COVID-19. It makes it a little bit better.
Right. So you have been holding out with COVID-19 in Cairo, but then you said as soon as they started opening up, you said, let's change our environment. Let's go a different place. So, and you were also talking about how good the diving is in the Red Sea. You were making me very envious. I know Doug was like, "Oh, we need to be with you." So
Yeah.
So tell us more about where you are.
Okay, so Dahab is it translates to gold, and it's like a small tiny city off Sharm el-Sheikh. It's when you arrive to Sharm el-Sheikh airport. You can take it from there, and it's a beautiful ride in the mountains to reach this point. There are actually a lot of people from around the world who actually settled here. It's almost impossible to leave, honestly. Like a lot of people all the way from Europe to the US to Russia to anywhere around the world, and especially the home people of Dahab are very kind people here, and they really take care of everybody. So it's really the vibe. It's very clean energy. People come here to meditate, to do yoga. It's a very peaceful city, and it's really beautiful. I would really recommend everybody who comes to Egypt to see this beautiful side, away from the busy side of Cairo,
I know a lot of people, when they think of Egypt, they think of the pyramids. And of course, there's so much, Egypt's the seat of civilization, right? So it's it's a beautiful country, but gosh, that looks pretty. So how are y'all faring with the COVID-19?
Well, I must say it has been a difficult time, I guess, for everybody. A lot of time for change, too much change, perhaps. We at Helm, and in Egypt, the Egyptian people are known for their great sense of humor. So whenever anything, a catastrophe hits or something big hits, what I think I love about Egyptians is that how we manage to find the funny part of everything and the humor in everything to try to keep us going through the hard times. Nevertheless, people have been taking it very seriously. In Egypt, there's a strong sense of family. There's a lot of connection between people. So the moment I think people feared for their family, especially that here families live together, I think you suddenly found these, huge cities where I've never seen people so committed to something. It's almost impossible to see that Egyptians took it so seriously because their fear for their families and their parents' health and the close ones and the loved ones. Nevertheless, it has been also a time of hope. It has been, the holy month of Ramadan is normally a festive month in Egypt. For both Muslims and Christians, everybody invites everybody. There's lots of night parties where people get along. And it was very difficult during this month this year because people couldn't invite each other. Even companies, they normally invite all of the staff for a night. It's kind of like Christmas time as well. And it was such a difficult time because, that's also the time when everybody gives back. So poor people, you will find everywhere in the streets these huge amounts of tables where people feed everybody every single day, and you couldn't have that. And with a lot of poverty in Egypt, people tried to find new ways to solve this problem. So instead, a lot of people made packaged food and they would send it to poor families and try to keep it safe while doing that. So it was kind of beautiful to see people still cared and the goodness is still there in all of this.
Yeah, and that's one thing. There's so much I love about Egypt, and I remember, just when you were walking some of the issues you were walking with, and I know you and I, you were gonna have an international conference, and it got all messed up with some of these things that are just beyond our control, And I remember talking to a friend of mine in Egypt, and I was saying, gosh, we were so shocked when we were watching the Arab Spring, and we were so concerned. And she's like, yeah, we were too. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, because it's not everybody that these things are happening to. And it's just, it's one thing that I loved about Egypt, like you said, it was how family is everything, and the families are together and they support each other, and it's multi-generational. And I think there's a lot that we're learning from Egypt and other countries right now as we walk this in maybe not the most efficient way, with lots of misinformation, a lot of confusion in the United States with the COVID-19. But I think the time of going back to family and really, really focusing on what is important, which is the work we both do, right? I am also hopeful. I'm thinking we're going to learn so much from this. And I know there's still a lot of fussing and fighting and stuff going on, but I'm hopeful that maybe what we're going to do is we're going to learn that we're stronger together. We're stronger when we support each other. So thank you for letting us, see some of the beauty that's in Egypt. And, but I really want to talk about your work. So I was impressed with Helm the second that I learned about you. And you know what I was thinking? I think I actually found you because when I was invited over, my daughter with Down syndrome, with Down syndrome, she went with me and we both spoke, and she was treated so beautifully by everybody in Egypt. She's, confidently walking down the road and in the airport, and the kindness. The only thing I would say that's funny about Cairo is I've never seen driving like that. I must say, of all countries I've ever been to, Cairo takes the cake.
I mean, yes, it's chaotic. I mean, let's face it. I think it's one of the biggest cities in the world, and there's a lot of people out there. And I apologize to everybody who comes to Cairo. Like in Cairo, we always say Cairo is not Egypt, please. And I feel so bad for people who come to Cairo and just never see any part of Egypt. I mean, we have all these beautiful cities, and of course, Cairo is great in terms of it's where a lot of things happen, but it's one of the busiest and hardest cities for Egyptians, and it's not a representation of Egypt. So for me, I always advise people to maximum stay in Egypt for a day or two to see the pyramids and a few things around. See everywhere else in Egypt, then come back to Cairo to put things into perspective, because there's so much to see. We have beaches, we have down Upper Cairo, down on the map, but in Upper Cairo, you'll find all these amazing Nile cities, and they're really peaceful and beautiful. And I'm like, everybody, looks at Cairo, and I'm please,
right. Well, and that's the way it is with us. Everybody thinks we're all New York City or Silicon Valley or Washington, D.C. And there's actually some really amazing, gorgeous, beautiful places in the United States. So I one thing that used to happen a lot as I always traveled was I always got to go to these cool places. And what I
Mm-hmm.
would get to see is the airport, some restaurants,
Yes.
conference rooms, which are the same everywhere, and hotel rooms, which is the same everywhere. And actually did get to go to the pyramids, and I have a picture of Sarah on a camel that I still
Oh,
use. But I haven't gotten to see the rest of Egypt, and that I definitely want to do. Egypt, there's something that is just so beautiful about Egypt and the Egyptian people. But okay, so let me not get distracted. Let's talk about Helm, because when I first heard about Helm, I just thought it was amazing. And then you've done so much more since I
mhm.
first learned about you. And when I saw you in Geneva, and you did a wonderful presentation in Geneva, um, when we both organization, which is part of the UN. And I just thought, why? Wait a minute, why has she not been on this program? Why? So anyway, I'm glad we finally rectified it, because the work you're doing and your team is doing is amazing. And I think we all can learn from it. So tell us about Helm.
Okay, so Helm it basically was simply, first of all, it translates to dream. It means dream, and in Arabic. And around 10 years ago, I think it was. I was 20. I just, I was 20 going on 21, and I just graduated from the American University in Egypt and Cairo. And I remember that when I was in college, I went for a training in part of my studies was in Germany, so in Frankfurt, and I went to the Blind Museum, and I remember it's Dialogue in the Dark, and that experience, living for 1 hour as a blind person, that was what triggered for me the dream, the big Helm. And Ramos had a very similar experience in the American University with a friend. Even though the American University is one of the most accessible universities in Egypt, nevertheless, we discovered how a lot of teachers, a lot of students don't know how to deal with people with disabilities. And that was actually the trigger of what we later on came to discover, that this is a problem of over 15 million people in Egypt. This is a problem of 1 billion people around the world. And that was the beginning point of a dream of, we just wanted to make sure everybody has an equal opportunity to have full access to all aspects of life. So that's Helm. That's our greater mission. That's when we feel like there will be no need for that dream anymore. And we hope that one day that would happen. So we founded it, like you said, we actually started Helm at the time of the Arab Spring. So it was a very difficult time to start something with such a big cause at a difficult, economic and political and everything. So at the beginning, we started it as a university club under the umbrella of the American University. And a few years later, we were able to found the nonprofit organization, which started to work on employment of people with disabilities, because this is where all the needs assessment research led us to do. Everybody in the field said, okay, we're doing all of these efforts and they're not, mainstream yet, but at least we need to start putting, an independent track for people with different disabilities. And then we founded the company. So the company Helm has been founded around 3 years ago. We're on our 4th year now. And the idea of how the growth of Helm became eventually a sustainable for-profit social enterprise was because we wanted to make a point. We didn't want it anymore to be simply something that we're doing for charity, or we're doing it because, no, we started to evolve to think, okay, we need, of course, different umbrellas to work with, but we needed to work on policies, and which actually happened, and we can talk about that as well. And then also reinforce it by having the solutions and the platforms that allows for that to happen.
Yes, I know that when I went over there, I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Abeer ElSaie. And when we were sitting down and we were talking to her, about where Egypt was and the employment, and the government really wanted to encourage employers to step up, but there weren't a lot of solutions. And that was when Helm, right around the time when Helm was finding your way. It's just amazing to actually see so much progress. Y'all have had a lot of progress in Egypt, and I found the same thing. I found that when I created my first company, Tech Access, I didn't want to do it as a non wanted to do it. At the time, I didn't know the term social enterprise, but I thought, no, I want to prove that you can be a for-profit company and have this amazing workforce and you can add great value. It was maybe a little ahead of its time, but that's also okay because now you see this happening more and more, and you see organizations like yours. And we know that Egypt has a goal for all of its employers to have a certain percent, I believe is 5% of the population. I mean, 5% should be individuals with disabilities, but you've accomplished a lot in a very short amount of time. And that is very impressive. And that's why, I wanted to have you on the program. But, and as you mentioned, policy, I mean, you were actually starting truly from scratch. I mean, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, which we're celebrating 30 years on July 26th. Yay! Still lots of work to do, but you didn't have a lot of that. You really truly were starting from scratch. So I'm quite impressed and continue to be impressed with you and your team and what you have accomplished. So tell us more about, the services that you provide, and are you providing them to employers? And you, once again, you mentioned policy, and we have to have good policies. We have to have good policies government-wise and across the board. So I think this is a very important part of it.
Yes. No, it's true. I mean, I agree with you. I think the first struggle, that we had was, the first thing was that, we knew that, we should have a top bottom approach. We had to create our theory of change, and we had to, understand, being, young and enthusiastic as a group of, people who supported Helm in the very beginning. We were all working together in the same company, universities, and there were a lot of support that we got from a lot of people who wanted to help. But then we realized very quickly that to make change, we needed to have and to make a proper stakeholders mapping, and to start realizing that we need to focus, because in the beginning, the size of the problem was enormous, especially with the case of Egypt. There's huge, with poverty and disability, we know there's a huge, vicious cycle. And then with the other point is that there are other factors aside from disability, even with policies and, social, economic, and a lot of other challenges, that are hindering our progress. I mean, I agree with you with the fact that we had the policy part, that's our main, North Star, and that's where we're heading. And at that point, we realized, okay, but first we need to prove why we need this policy changed. So I think before Helm, I mean, with Dr. Abeer ElSaie, she was actually one of our biggest supporters. She still is. She's, an incredible person. And actually, you know what? When we were kids, we were literally just graduated, and a lot of people just said, in Egypt, you need to know connections, you need to have this and this so you can make impact. And like everywhere in the world, yes, it would help, but we actually didn't. We had a very good opportunity as people to have good education, which we used to try to leverage ourselves, and we started doing. So I remember my first activity in Helm was selling stickers about awareness about people with disabilities in the streets for, $2 and $1. That's how we started, actually. We didn't have a big bulk of money to kick everything with. But then we soon came to the conclusion that, we needed to focus. And that happened with very good opportunities, which actually had nothing to do with just disability, but rather business. So we got this great opportunity in MIT. It was a business plan competition when we got first prize. So that was our big window to, oh, okay. So we were pushed towards thinking, social enterprises rather than business, rather than an NGO. And then the other part is when we won the second one, Rise Egypt, which was, the ceremony was in Harvard, and it was a great also 2-year accelerator. And like you said, Deborah, it's yes, disability and learning about the technical knowledge and being very lucky to meet the incredible people like John Kemp and Eileen Seitzer and Jay Cardinelli, who are on our advisory board at the moment, and who actually came to Egypt, during that conference you were talking about, and they also saw how chaotic, Egypt is, and understood that how that would impact our work in disability, because, having this large scale of work, having this chaotic cities and a lot of work that needs to be done, not just in the disability field, that's when, they realized how hard it is to make impact. Nevertheless, we had to start working on the ground. We had to show them, before we hit policy level, we had to show them these are the emblems, these are the ambassadors of people with disabilities. If you invest in people with disabilities, that's what you get. You get active members who are going to remove a lot of burden off the economy. It's going to support your companies. And that was our strategy, is show them first. So we started actually working bottom up in the beginning rather than top bottom, to start working, top bottom, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And you made me think of a question that I want to ask you. And I love the people you mentioned, obviously huge fan of John Kemp, who's been on the program, Jay Cardinelli, formerly with Disney, big fan of his. Eileen actually was on the program not long ago. And she was, we were talking about you, and I said, this is ridiculous. How can I not have had her on this program? But it's funny when that happens, because the program's been going on for 4 years. But a point I wanted, and I have a feeling you're going to agree with me on this, but often, and I think the world has changed, and in some ways they needed to change. But one thing I think a mistake that we were making in social causes around the world. I think a mistake. At first, I believe I was invited to join these conversations in different countries, Egypt, Oman, all these different countries. And I think it's important to learn from people that have been doing it. So I was invited over often because I'm an American, I'm a mom, I have a business, I'm knowledgeable. But I think a mistake that we keep making over and over and over again is it's great to bring in the experts. It's great, but the reality is if you are not working with the Helms in the country, that it's a mistake. And we've seen that over and over. We do these wonderful, amazing things, and then we leave. And if the people have not taken it and really considered all the cultural issues. I mean, in Cairo, you'll have multiple languages that you're speaking, including a lot of Arabic. And at the time, it's gotten a little better, but everything's in English. So I think a mistake that we continue to make in the social good arenas is we are not putting the knowledge in the hands of the people. That's another reason why I love Helm so much, because we need Helms, we need the dreams in every single country, but it needs to be put in the hands of the people. Yeah, get our feedback. We'll tell you what we think, we'll tell you what we've done. I always would encourage them to look at what we've done right and what we've done wrong, because you can actually learn a lot by the mistakes that we make. In the US, we certainly, you might notice right now, we are not perfect, but we actually really do care about people and true inclusion. The people care about it. But I wanted to, let you speak about that, because once again, when I got involved in the conversation early on, and there were other amazing leaders involved, there weren't in these early conversations. They were not being invited yet. And I actually asked one government official, a gentleman, and I said, well, what about, where are the people on the ground? And he's like, well, there's some people, but they're complaining and they're criticizing us. And I think one thing that I loved about G3ICT, they did a project where they were working with people on the ground saying, okay, this is how you talk to your government officials. This is how you talk to corporations. This is how to, so once again, if it's not put in the hands of the people, I think that we often see maybe some early success and then failures. So I have a feeling you agree with me on that.
I completely, yes, I completely agree. And actually, I was, like you said, we have our limitations to what we can do at this point in time. And that was one thing which I personally used to fall into the trap of doing in the beginning, because every time you see, you see like some of the solutions, you can see it right there and you really want to do something about it. And then you think, but you can only do so much because, that's one big lesson that I think we learned at Helm, is that when you want to make change, you can't, it could go slower, if you're not doing everything yourself, okay? Because you're not supposed to, because, we understood that our role, actually, we have a great project happening right now on the ground, actually, to give you an example about that. So we do have a problem with higher education, and, like I told you about creating opportunities for people with disabilities in all aspects of life. So we got to start somewhere, right? And education is one of the key, sectors that we needed to focus on as part of our theory of change. And one of the biggest projects we're working with USAID, USAID and with Amena ElSaie in Egypt and the Ministry of Higher Education, is that the project is about taking a sample of the biggest 5 universities in Egypt, Cairo, Ain Shams, Alexandria, Asyut, and basically what we did is that we started to create and activate the disability centers in a way that would be very efficient. And to give you a perspective of the size of the project, Cairo University alone has 250,000 people walking in every day. That's like a city, that's a big university.
That's a big city.
So exactly. So can you imagine if that's the scale where we're trying to reform the inclusion and the system within the university? So we needed to start working on a system that Helm is going to be there for 3 years. And our role is to support and give our consultancy to make sure that the center is set up. There's a manual for all the universities in the higher education and the ministry to follow and mainstream across all universities. Like you said, you can find the best models and best practices in the world, but what's going to work with Egypt can only work with Egypt with the internal system that it has. So a lot of the work that you do and the project is continuously being shaped as we're progressing through, the project, and what discoveries we're unfiguring. How does things go? How do people communicate inside? What kind of issues do they have when they're dealing with each other? Who has the upper say in the hierarchy? Who really has the decision-making, power? And what are the so sometimes we even include in capacity building programs like with project management and how to manage a team. It doesn't have to do anything with disability. In order to make a disability unit work, you got to make sure that they have the skills to manage and to scale and to sustain. So I do agree with you on, I'm taking an example of Cairo University and the universities, but like I said, it's a huge project compared to the amount of people that it affects. And if it works and it's working, then we can start to work with the model to counteract the I wouldn't say they're negative people, but I would say less optimistic people who, have been used to, nothing changing for a long time. But I think what I'm very proud of Helm's team of doing is that they just, and the whole team keeps going, we fail, we try this method, it doesn't work, then we try another method until we find the way that it works. Yes, it may take maybe 10 times instead of 2 times in a regular situation, but that's how it is. And I think that's the secret. I'm not going to lie to you. I want to be also real. So it's really frustrating sometimes because some of our team members, sometimes we have a lot of people who just, they just can't take it. It's not an easy job. You want to see results. So to wait for a long time to see results, I think I, as a leader in Helm, learned that part of my duty and part of my responsibility is not to just only work long term. I have to take care of the team. The mission is important, But then one of the
Right.
core important things is also to take care of the team and the people working on this mission, because otherwise you don't have anybody to work with. So again, in Helm, we have this value of people come first. You know, if it's not just about what we're doing, but also how we're doing it and how good are we taking care of our people as well.
Well, let's talk a little bit about cultural issues in Egypt. So, what I believed, but it's once again, I'm just stepping in, looking around, and I don't live in Egypt, but there's appeared to be some cultural barriers in that it was really the responsibility, if I understand it correctly, for the families to take care of, the family members with people with disabilities. And certainly society had a role to play, but it seemed at first that there was even, was society ready for people with disabilities to really join the workforce. So I would be curious about that, and also curious about what you see as some of the biggest barriers still in Egypt with the employers really working with you. And I'm hoping some corporations, especially multinational corporations, have really jumped in and said, no, we want to help, we want to hire, we want to support you, give us a little bit of that landscape.
Sure. So I think we started small. We started small by creating our methodology, and our strategy always is to start with creating pilot projects until, like I said, something works, and then we start from there. So we discovered from day one, it doesn't, the first thing Ramez and I did when we first were, the co-founders, and we wanted to solve the employment problem, and we did a needs assessment. We started hiring around 600 people. And in one company, in several companies, but at one point. And at that time, in less than 6 months, all of the people with disabilities either left their job, were laid off, and there was no sustainability. And that's when I think it hit us. It was like, okay, there is something bigger there. And understanding how, we discovered something that, a lot of models that we see in the Zero Project and our partners from around the world, we understand that it's a big equation. We call it the Helm 360. So what we do is we try to, first of all, raise awareness to people that it's, and the organizations and to the government. So first of all, we made sure we work with all the stakeholders, raising, creating big media campaigns, making sure that we create public-private partnerships to make sure that all stakeholders are trying to glue people to work together rather than, work in silos. And then the other thing is to provide information. And believe me, I discovered that, a lot of like you said, a lot of people, when they, start saying, oh, they're not, there's no change, or they complain and then they don't do anything about it and they're not cooperative. And then actually we are proof that if you work hard enough, you just need to work hard, and you need to work smart as well. Yep. And prove to the company and be the doctor with the company, with the HR, representative, and be like, what is your problem? And what do you face? And you start making them feel that I'm not attacking you. I'm here to support you. And that's the kind of attitude that made the companies start to work with us. And then we started small. So we would do one training. And I can share with you some videos about the types of trainings we do, like the experience I had in Germany with the, living an experience like a blind person would. We started doing for different types of disabilities and giving them an understanding of what a disability means. And then start to train them with disability equality to make them plan better. Then to start giving them the good calibers that suit and do the job placement, process, and to start analyzing the job and creating, a proper process within the company. And we started where there's already room for that. So we started with multinational companies who already have the policies reinforced and they have the system. And there is, like you said, the law really supports us now because, there's, now with the updated law that was launched in December 2018, now we have the upper hand, because right now in COVID-19 time, all the companies stopped hiring except for people with disabilities. So that is actually very important. So we're not out of work, because there is a strong consequence. So for me, I'm actually happy about that because now the companies don't have a choice. Good. And that, so when the government does their work, and then we do our work, and then the company starts to understand that it's in their benefit. So our strategy as Helm is give them one seat. Actually, we learned this from Eileen Seitzer. So she's our consultant with that. And she said a very nice story in Brazil, when you're sitting by the beach in Rio, they throw you a couple of peanuts, and then you love the peanuts. So you buy more peanuts because it's so good and you can't stop. So that's exactly what we do in Helm as well. So we try to give them a really good model, the perfect caliber for the perfect job. And then what happens is they like it, so they're willing to invest more. Because before that, they've only seen bad examples. So it's like, we're not going to get there. We don't want to open that file. Let's just hire on paper. On paper means they hire them and they don't do the job. So we do the math for them. We actually look at the return on investment. We tell them, look, you're spending double the amount of money. You're paying someone to stay at home and you're paying someone to go do the job. So actually you're losing here and here. So why don't you use this money to actually pivot your strategy and actually have someone, and your company is going to look good. So even the skeptical companies, now what we're doing is we're trying to do a network. And the idea of the network is we already work with these companies. So all we're trying to do right now is connect them together. So instead of Helm talking, oh, we promise you that's going to happen, we promise you, oh, look at that company. Instead, we brought them all in one room and say, there you go. These are the success stories. These are the problems and so on. So yeah, so that's how we create progress. And then also we start to engage the government in events. For example, we would motivate them to give, for example, awards to companies that have already created an impact, so that there would be, first of all, that the government would be aware of the progress happening, showcasing the good success models. And then also what we're trying to do at the moment is through the Helm network, we're trying to connect with other existing networks and to try to collaborate more. Because with the culture in Egypt, people really want to do good. But at least from my perspective and what I've seen in the last 10 years in the field, I think people are really good in general. I really believe in the goodness of the people. I'm not talking about Egypt. I'm talking about people. But it's just that sometimes when people don't understand, what's happening, it's pretty normal that people will not react the way you want them to. And to be honest, I tell people all the time, like, we actually I remember my first email to the Minister of Social Solidarity, and people at Helm still laugh at it until today, because it was very informal and we didn't know her. We didn't know about politics. We didn't know anything. And I just wrote her, we really need you to come and motivate the companies in our first event. We were 24 years old at the time, Ramaz and I, and it was like 2 years into Helm. And we said, please come and do that because you will be our backbone. It was very like sincere and honest, but very also maybe a little bit, not so professional. And she came, she responded to the email. And sometimes it's not, I think people just keep, when you just attack people and tell them, no, you can't, they're the government, yes, sometimes, people do mistakes unintentionally or sometimes intentionally, or without reason. But if you really, I think it proved the point across the years that if you give people the opportunity to support and ask it in the right way and show them the way, yes, sometimes you might think, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. It's not my role, but it is what it is, and I think people, if you look at the goodness of the people, they give you good back. Life is not perfect, like you said, nor is perfect, but there are good models out there, and there are countries that are more advanced than others. So acknowledging that and learning from that, I think Helm is really not Helm in Egypt. Helm is really with amazing people. Like when you found us, from the very early days of Helm, I remember your first email. I was super excited when I got your email, and I was like, wow, somebody's noticing us, all the way from the US. And she's a great person, and she has this done because we read a lot about you and your amazing work. And I think it's very important that people, and incredible people like you and your daughter, and can realize how much of an impact you could be affecting people all the way across the world to keep going.
Right. Sometimes we just need hope. Even if after it's all said and done, it doesn't turn out the way you thought, sometimes that's what I found. Sometimes you just need hope, and hope can take you over to the point where you do, get support. But I know that we're almost out of time, so I want to ask you one more question, and then I also want you to let the audience know how to find out more about Helm. I know you're on social media, you have a website, but what do you wish the corporations, the global corporations would do and others would do? How can we better, including people like me, how do we do a better job at supporting what you're doing? Because I just think it's so important to the work that you're doing.
I think, especially with multinationals, I think that I have a request. We worked with over 200 corporations in the MENA region and in Egypt, and we work with a lot of governments, obviously, with big scale projects that have progressed. I didn't want to waste a lot of time on giving these examples. I'd be very happy that anybody who would be watching this podcast or that we could actually see the kind of work on our website that we do, and the kind of, we work on a 360 model, like I said, to transform organizations to become inclusive and accessible in all different matters, and to support them. But at the same time, I have a request that from the big corporations, if they could try to reinforce in countries like in Egypt and in developing countries, to not just look at the numbers, but actually look deeper and reinforce and push for that real change, so that organizations like us can continue doing what they're doing. Because, it's easy to put in numbers, but if you start pushing, because these are the companies who we work with now who are creating progress, the ones who really have it in their DNA that, no, we're not just, plugging in some numbers and, checking in some boxes. I think that also the support to organizations like Helm, removing barriers, social barriers that would say, because Helm works in Egypt, in the Middle East, that means we're any less experienced. Actually, if anything, we have much bigger experiences with more struggles, which makes it so much easier to work in more developed countries, actually. And to bridge these gaps, to allow organizations like Helm to have better access to this knowledge, I think this is what helped Helm become where we are. These great international experiences, whether from networks or individuals or consultants. And I think that the business networks globally needs to include organizations like Helm around the world, and I met many of them, who actually just want to be also as organizations treated equally, and to not have the stigma of that part, because it makes our work harder.
I agree, and I see it just keeps happening. We keep leaving you out of the conversation, and I think that's a mistake. I think it's a mistake. We need to find the Helms in every country, especially the developing countries, and support them. And I say to corporations all the time, if you have a geo footprint that includes, say, Egypt, and you're not employing people with disabilities, they were including them as customers, you are in the UK and in Europe, well, then it makes me wonder how really committed you are to our community. Because I appreciate what you are doing, but why aren't you doing it in Egypt? Because we have, organizations like Helm that will help you be successful. You are already doing it, especially if they're only doing it in the US, but they're a global company. That accidentally might make people think you're only doing it because you care about you're going to get sued. It's just a compliance issue. You're not really committed to true inclusion. If you're really committed, then you would want to work with organizations like Helm that would help you make sure that people were included in your entire geo footprint. And that I feel sometimes like I'm nagging, but it's true. It's true. And you're a perfect example of that, which is why I wanted to have you on the show. But tell us about your website and how people can find you on social media. We'll make sure we'll include that. If anybody wants to work with Helm, reach out to me and I will connect you with her, because they're really an amazing organization. I've really been impressed from the moment they started. I fell in, I just really been impressed. So tell us how to find you.
Thank you, Deborah. And so it's helmegypt.org. Helm, it's HEL, like a helm of a ship, which actually does as good in English as well. So that we also have our training academy now is live. So we actually, during the COVID-19, we have a website now for our academy, and it serves for both trainings and for organizations and for people with disabilities so that they can progress. So it's an inclusive platform. It's called helmacademy.com. So it's helmegypt.org and helmacademy.com. And you're going to find Helm Egypt on Facebook and Helm Egypt NGO on Instagram. And it would be great to have the conversation going. We would love to grow our network, and it's really, really a pleasure to be with you. And thank you, Deborah, for believing in Helm from the very first day and supporting so much. And I can't wait till you come here to Dahab and the Red Sea soon.
Yes, I want to.
Maybe we can have our next conference after COVID-19 to be around the Red Sea. That was actually John and Jay's and Eileen, they wanted that to happen, so we can do that.
Yes, we need to start seeing each other again. But thank you so very much. Thank you so much. And I hope you'll come on the program again, because I love the work that you and your partner are doing, and your entire team is incredible. So thank you everyone for watching today or listening. And we will make sure we put all of our information out there so that any corporations listening can go and support people with disabilities in Egypt as well. So thanks everyone.
Thank you, Deborah.